So with all this talk of toxic masculinity and all these attacks on men, it might be worthwhile to reflect on what does it mean for a man to care. We have a great guest with us today to come talk about this subject. His name's Trevor Loudon. He's an expert on communism and socialism, one of the leading experts, actually. And he's the filmmaker behind Enemies Within, also a book. And so, Trevor, real pleasure having you back on Crossroads.
Hey, look, it's great to be on, Josh. Thanks. It's good for a couple of guys to be sitting down talking, eh?
Yeah, no, a pleasure. And everyone, please remember to like and subscribe. Need your support? Get started now. So, Trevor, you recently wrote an article in the Epoch Times about masculine love. And so a lot of people may not understand what that even means. You know, what do you mean by masculine love? Tell us about this.
Look, I just started the article with a story, and I think it illustrates it beautifully. I have a friend who is a very senior military officer. He's led men into combat many times. No one would ever question his bravery or his masculinity. Now, a few years ago, he had a 16-year-old son who was smoking marijuana every single day. No matter what the parents said, he wouldn't stop. No matter how they tried to reason with him or bargain with him, he wouldn't give it up. And it was causing huge problems in the family. And the father threatened to throw him out of the home if he didn't stop. And the mother would say, no, we can't do that. We've got to love him. We've got to get him through this. We can't throw our son out onto the street. You know, as any mother would say, because she just loves her children unconditionally. So the father, eventually, he made a very tough decision. He got his son in the back of the car, took him down to the local shopping mall, put him out of the car and said, this is your home, son, until you learn to love your family more than you love marijuana. See you later. Turned him out. He drove away, choking back tears, praying all the way home. 5 nerve-wracking days went past, and then they got a knock on the door. It was his son. He said, Dad, please can I come home? I'll never smoke that junk again. And he kept his word. That's masculine love, the love that will take the tough decisions, that will be brave and decisive, motivated completely by love, but sometimes having to make the harsh calls, the tough calls. So, you know, this is the point I'm making, that, you know, there are two sides to love. You know, there's the feminine side, which is nourishing and nurturing and kind and welcoming. You know, that's the love of the mother. And what family does not need the love of the mother? You know, the warm, welcoming voice when you come home from school, you know, the hot meals, the storytelling and all this kind of thing. That's fantastic. But you also need the love of the father, who will kick your backside if you disrespect your mother, who will demand you do your homework, who will make you clean your room up, but will also take you fishing, will teach you to stand up for yourself, teach you to be courteous to your elders and protect your younger siblings and those weaker than yourself. That masculine love is what leads men to fight just wars, to defy tyrants, to build business empires, to build churches, and to build strong families. And that's the side of love that is hugely devalued in our society, and our culture is going to hell in a handbasket because of it.
Well, and we can see this. I'd say there's two sides to it. One, there's a rebellion against masculine love. It's this do as thou wilt, don't tell me what's right or wrong mentality, you know, moral relativism that we see in society. And at the same time, there's a hunger for it. And it's interesting because you see this with rebellious teenagers sometimes, is their fathers might be very lax with them, but it's almost like they're rebelling because they want the father to establish some kind of order. There's real hatred for the father in our society these days, and I think it comes from this somehow. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I think that's very, very true. You know, and the left is as they try and destroy our society and our families, they try and destroy the masculine role. If men are emasculated, women won't respect them. Children won't respect them. And young kids act up for exactly the reason you say. They actually welcome that clip round the ear or that grounding or that being dragged out of a party at 2 o'clock in the morning and put in the back of the car and brought home. They welcome the fact that their parent, their father, will take decisive action to look after them. And, there's a lot of bitter young people out in the world today, but not many of them are bitter because they were over-disciplined. Most of them are bitter because they were under-disciplined. They felt their parents didn't care about them. They didn't respect any form of authority, and they blame their parents for the state they're in today. And we see that all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I was reading a story recently. It was in a book. I hate to cite it and not name it, but I can't remember which book it was. But it might have been The Female Brain. I can't remember. But it has an anecdote, and it talks about this young girl, and she was getting ready to go to a party, and she was dressed in very revealing, inappropriate clothes, and she walks by her father, and he goes, "Oh yeah, have fun." And she gets to the car and just starts crying because she did not dress like that because she wanted to go to the party and get men's attention or whatever. She dressed like that because she wanted her father to say, "I don't want you going out like that." It was like it was a cry for help for her father, and he missed it. And that for her was devastating, actually.
Well, exactly. She might have. If he told her to change her clothes or stay home, she probably would have cried and, whatever. But she would still remember that night. He missed the cue. He proved that he didn't care enough to set standards for her. And that's masculine love. Masculine love will take the hard calls, will be unpopular at times, will be the bad guy, the bad cop in the family. But look, I know lots of kids who look back on their dad and they boast with pride about how tough he was on them. Gosh, my dad was tough. He wouldn't let us do that. If we did this, we would expect the consequences. He would take us out to the woodshed, and they smile about it. There's no bitterness there. They just relish the fact that their father cared enough about them to be tough on them. I've done a little bit of military service. So I saw young hooligans from New Zealand in the sort of New Zealand National Guard, young guys who were going off the rails. And they got into that boot camp and they just loved it. First time in their lives, they had a man yelling at them, telling them what to do, demanding they be out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning, demanding that they do 50 push-ups, whatever it was. They blossomed, they bloomed under that because many of them come from broken homes. They never had a father. They had no male teachers who were willing to lay down the law. For the first time in their lives, they had a commanding male presence and they responded to it.
It's a very interesting principle. I wonder why people crave that. I mean, what's your understanding in terms of why people do crave that kind of discipline?
Well, we are living in an uncertain world. There are challenges out there. We come into the world as babies. We don't know much. We grow up as infants, and we need to be nurtured through that time. We need mum to look after us and change our diapers and feed us and clothe us and welcome us home. But we need dad to protect us from the big bad things in the outside world. To provide, to put food on the table, to protect us from the bully over the road, to make sure there's nobody lurking around the daughters, to warn us, to teach us things, to teach us to stand up for ourselves, to be self-respectful. We were designed this way for a reason. There's two sides to our nature. There's the masculine side and the feminine side. And in our society today, the feminine side is so massively overemphasized, and the masculine side is so completely ridiculed and degraded and diminished, that this has caused a huge imbalance. And there's no mistake, it's not a mystery why so many young women can't get into meaningful relationships, because they don't know what a good man is.
And
There's
even a lot of young men, they don't know what a good
a
man
lot of
is.
young men, they have no role models. They think being a man is joining a gang and listening to rap music and being as disrespectful to everybody as they possibly can, and including to women. If you don't know what it's like to be a man, you will just drift into all sorts of corruption. And a woman has to know what a man is. For all the talk of equality, there's not many women I know who don't want to have a man they can respect. For every, every ad on TV most of the ads on TV are stupid men being saved out of tricky situations by smart women or their kids. Most of the situation comedies are all about stupid men being made fun of by their children and their spouses. This is a long-term cultural phenomenon. It's the denigration of masculinity, and now it's even called toxic masculinity, as though boys should be ashamed of being, wanting to play soldiers and running around the playground and fighting each other. I'll tell a little story. I was in New Zealand. My boy was about 4 years old, and we dropped him off at a daycare. And I came back at the end of the day, and the teacher said, look, we need to talk to you about your son. He did something rather inappropriate today. And I thought, why did he swear? What did he do, And he said he and another boy picked up a broomstick, and they pretended it was a gun, and they were shooting the other children. I said, "You so?" So, well, we don't encourage violence. This is inappropriate. I said, well, how do you handle it? They said, well, we get them with a broomstick and get them to pretend it's something else. And I said, what, you mean like a bazooka or something? And basically, I took my boy out of there and we machine gunned each other all the way across the parking lot. I was pleased that he was playing boyish games like I did when I was a kid. What is bad about this? There's nothing. It is what trains men for their leadership role in society. For being, it wasn't a bunch of little, snowflakes who stormed the beaches at Normandy. It wasn't a little bunch of snowflakes who fought the Civil War or the War of Independence or, flew to the moon or whatever. It was tough men who had been hardened through their lives to take tough calls and discipline themselves and lovingly discipline others. That is what's driven our society. That's what drives every society. And when we devalue that, we condemn our society to disaster. And we're seeing that every day. The recent mass killings, spate of mass killings, common denominator, almost, I think out of the last 14 mass killings, out of the last 15 of them, 14 of those boys had no father in the home. Is there a little bit of a message there?
It's interesting. If we look at, I was reading the what do you call it? The story of the hero, the hero's journey recently. And one part stood out to me, which is the forgiving of the father. And it's such an interesting principle that you find a lot of men, not just men and women, but some of the best people you have in society, one of the key moments in their lives is if they went through all these hardships, is when they went and forgave their father. And that's such a deeply symbolic move because it's the bringing back of order into your life. And I think we can look to more traditional history in terms of how this was interpreted. Your love, your religion, your belief, your love for God is what creates moral order in your life. It's the moral anchor in your life. Your love for your country is a love for your culture. It's a love for who you are, the love for your own history. And the love for your father is the, discipline the self order,
Mhm.
how you order your own life. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, and how I know you were talking about society itself kind of craving this masculine love. How do you see that reflected?
Well, you go into any black ghetto in this country, and they are hellholes. And there are gangs, there are drugs, there are crimes, there are shootings on a regular basis. South and West Chicago are perfect examples. Some of the worst murder rates in the country, because all these young men, most of them have never had a father in their lives, think being a man is going out and shooting other people because they've never had discipline, or they get this hyper macho type of attitude. Because being a man isn't being super macho. Being a man is able to balance yourself, to integrate your masculine characteristics with your feminine side. We've all got a feminine side as well, and being able to discipline yourself to act purposefully to achieve goals and get where you need to go. That's not being a gang member and just causing mayhem. That's a corruption of masculinity. So, and you see this all over, the total downgrading of masculinity has led to either wimpish young men who can't get out of their mom's basement and wouldn't know how to stand up for themselves if they tried, and these hyper masculine sort of gangbanger type men who just go around creating mayhem. The denigration of masculinity has created those two extremes, and it's wrecking us. And so what we need is something in the middle where men are comfortable being men. They know what their role is. They know they've got to be disciplined. They know they've got to be responsible, and they act out of love, as you say, for their families, for their God, for their country, and that's what leads them to commit great acts of heroism and courage. That's what it does. So if we're going to devalue masculinity because some men do bad things, and they're not what I would call real men by any means. Gangbangers and rapists and murderers are not real men by any stretch of the imagination. So if we're going to devalue masculinity, we are heading for huge negative consequences. And the jail populations and the drug problem and the teen suicides and the teen pregnancies and all of these things stem back to that cause.
And, we were talking off camera for a while, too, that I don't know if it was you or me who said it first, but, we can see this, for example, in, I think, Jordan Peterson becoming as popular as he has.
Absolutely.
He's kind of become the father figure of, YouTube, as funny as it is.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
he's bold enough to say being a man is a great thing and it's a responsibility. And these young guys who just love Jordan Peterson like a chocolate, they have never heard this stuff before. They didn't hear it from dad, if they had a dad. They didn't hear it from their teachers because most of their teachers were female. They've never been in the military. They have never heard of this masculine responsibility or masculine love. And he is very good about it. He's liberated a lot of young men who realize it's okay to be a man now. It's not something that's toxic or dangerous. They don't have to feminize themselves to be accepted. So he's been a hugely positive force, which is why the left absolutely hates him, because they want a feminized population, which is far more easy to control.
So why do you, you mentioned that last part, that's interesting. Why do you, of course, they're easy to control, but could you elaborate on that a bit? Why do they want a feminized population? We see this in schools, for example, where it does favor, they view boys as dysfunctional girls, basically, is kind of how people explain
they
it.
do. And they don't let them play competitive sport. They don't let them even win games, because winning means there's got to be a loser, stuff like this. Well, this goes back to a left wing. It's basically always been a left wing, a socialist idea to, to create a society that's collective, that really just is ruled by a very few and follows along like sheep. Well, tough men who love their families and own property and have made something of their lives, they don't accept that garbage. They stand against it. They will fight against it. That they will stand for office. They'll go to the ballot box. They'll campaign. They'll write pamphlets or articles, and they will fight if necessary to preserve their liberty and the liberty of their families. That's their job as a man. That's masculine love.
And that's a threat to any system that is aware of that, of course.
That's a threat to any totalitarian system. What do you want all these independent, strong men running around, who stand up, who don't take any garbage, who don't buckle under, who don't always do what they're told? Why did people elect Donald Trump? They didn't think he was the most genteel type person in the world. There's not a lot of femininity about him. They elected him because they thought he would make tough decisions. And they may not have particularly liked his style, but they knew America needed someone who actually would make hard decisions and hard calls, and they knew that he loved his country. They could sense that. And as imperfect as he is, he embodies masculine love to a very great degree, which is why he commands such fantastic loyalty from his supporters and total contempt from his detractors.
Now, I think one part to touch on too is the feminization of society. It's a necessary element, but when it's taken to an extreme, I think we end up with what we have now, which is a overly soft society with no standards and no boundaries. Is really, I think, where we're at these days. But I know you mentioned some of this too in your article, which I referenced at the beginning. Could you explain a bit about how, the over feminine love in our society?
Well, there's got to be a balance, doesn't there? Like in a family, you've got to have a father who's strong and is clearly male, will make decisions, and you've got to have a mother who is nurturing and kind and acts as a complement to the father. That balance will produce children who are in results that are greater than the sum of the parts. It will produce great children. But a family where the man is very weak and the woman is very strong and domineering and bossy, that screws up the kids. And whereas a family where the man is a total tyrant and the woman is completely meek and submissive and cowed, that screws up the kids. There's got to be a balance. That applies in churches, that applies in society in general. We don't want a society that's run like Sparta, where they used to throw babies outside, and see if they would survive the night to toughen them up. We don't want a society like China either that so devalues femininity that they've aborted millions of baby girls. You cannot have a rigidly militaristic family society with no femininity and expect it to prosper. But you cannot have a society where femininity runs rampant and men are completely devalued and demasculinized and expect that to prosper either. And you take it to the churches too. Christianity was once a very masculine religion. Onward Christian soldiers marching as to war. A great battle hymn of the Republic. Jesus didn't come. Jesus came with a sword, not a poem. He didn't say. He said, "Go forth and sin no more. Not do whatever you like. I'll love you anyway." He went into the temple and he overturned the tables of the money changers. He didn't say, "Look, can we just sort this out, guys, and maybe come to a peaceful resolution and so everybody feels okay about this." That spirit has been lost in the churches now. There's no calling to account. There's no talk of, fighting sin or redeeming oneself. It's all about just do whatever you like. We'll love you anyway. And that's producing a religious culture that is corrupt, a society that is so feminized that we're losing our way, and a politics which is basically like just a circus now. All of that is a result of the devaluing of masculinity and masculine love and the massive overemphasis of feminine love. If you overemphasize one over the other, you lose love entirely. You know, love has got two sides. You've got to have both sides to make the whole, to make us holy. If you have one side and not the other, you've got a disaster on your hands. And that's why we have the social problems that we do today.
Mm. And even in relationships, I was just reading an article recently about, it was talking about how men, you know, if you want to be with a woman, you can't be her child. You need to be her husband, you need to be the man for her, right? She doesn't want to feel like she's raising you. She doesn't want to feel like she's, you know, having to coddle you all the time. And I think that this lack of masculine love too is part of the reason why both men and women have such toxic relationships these days. You have a lot of men who can't commit. You have a lot of men who don't want to, you know, be firm and have standards and, you know, make up their mind and say, I'm going to be with you for the rest of my life. And you have a lot of women who don't respect men because men don't behave like men, right?
Yeah, so you get a thing that women either go off men entirely or they just become promiscuous, and you know, you just get a circus going on. And because men feel their role has been diminished, they feel uncomfortable if they stand up for themselves, and women look at them and go, you know, do I want a man I don't want to be tougher than my husband. I don't want to be making all the hard decisions with the kids and disciplining the children all the time while he sits on the couch and plays computer games or goes off to his men's group in the mountains and discusses his feelings with others. You know, there's room for the masculine and feminine in both of us. We need both aspects of us. You know, men need to be kind. They need to be loving and gentle at times. But also they need to be able to lay down the law and fight and strive for things as well. Women need, you know, a little bit of masculinity sometimes too. But really, society and families function best when men are men and women are women, and they get on well, they respect each other, they are complementary to each other, and they form marriages and teams that produce great things, produce great families. You know, we're not put on this earth in a male and female form because God made a mistake. You know, God gave men masculine attributes. He gave women feminine attributes. He didn't make a mistake. Or even if you're an evolutionist, evolution didn't make a mistake. You know, men are men for certain reasons, women are women for certain reasons. And when we are comfortable in those roles, we have good relationships. We have mutual respect. There is long-term bonding. Is it possible? You cannot bond with somebody long-term if you do not respect them. That just doesn't work. It's got to be mutual respect for a long-term bond. And when men don't respect themselves, when they're put upon every day and denigrated every day, they lose respect for themselves, and women lose respect for them, and they lose respect for women, and you get the chaotic society that we have today.
Great. So, Trevor, I guess the last question is, you know, what do you hope people take away from this? What is you know, when you wrote that article, what was the lesson you wanted people to take into their own lives from it?
I wanted to point out what is pretty obvious, but nobody talks about, that we need men to be men and women to be women. We need more love in society. We need more kindness, but we also need more masculinity. We need more standards and discipline and guidance for ourselves and our young people. Don't be ashamed to make a tough decision when your children are concerned. Don't be ashamed that you believe in certain values and you believe in the heroic and you believe that men can achieve great things. Don't be embarrassed about any of that kind of stuff. That's the natural order of things. You know, forget this socialist, sociological garbage about masculine toxicity and all this. It's just propaganda. You want to be a man, be a man. You want to love a woman, love a woman. Don't pretend you're something else. Don't try and be something else. Be comfortable with what you are and develop those virtues. You'll be better off for it. Your wife will be better off for it. Your kids will be better off for it. Your church will be better off for it. And the society will be better off for it. It's just common sense, but it's very seldom stated.
Great. Trevor, real pleasure having you on the show. Where can people find more about your work?
Just go to my daily blog, trevorloudon.com. Loudon is spelled Loudon. So trevorloudon.com. Mainly I talk about politics, but culture, religion, and politics are all part of the quest for human liberty. And there are certain rules that we've inherited, and when we live by those rules, things go well. And when we go away from those rules, we get chaos. So let's get back to the rules.
Great. Trevor, pleasure as always. Thanks again. Please remember to like and subscribe. Need your support. See you next time.